Hey everyone, and thanks for joining us on today's webinar. My name is Alexis, and for those of you who don't know me, I am the Director of Customer Relations here at Community Income Tax. Joining us for our webinar today is going to be Dawn Evanoff. She is the technology product manager over at TaxWise, and we are going to cover all of the new features that have come out in the 2024 software, as well as carrying forward your data from prior years. As we go through the webinar, I'm sure you guys will come up with great questions. So in your window, you should see a Q&A button. Any questions you have, you can go ahead and type there, and we'll go ahead and answer those at the end. And without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Dawn.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hi, everybody. I'm Dawn Evanoff, and we'll go ahead and get started. You'll notice in my URL, I'm actually in the 22 software rather than the 23. Most of the updates that we did them in the final update for 22. So any new features and enhancements for 23, there's only one that is not here in 22. And so I'm going to show them to you here because I have more data in here to bring things up and show than I do in 23. So one of the first things that we changed, and everything that we changed is from feedback we got from customers of them saying it would make life easier if we did this, or we looked at it and said, wow, this takes a lot of keystrokes, a lot of time, and we're always about saving you time. So the first thing that we did is when you're going in to go look for a return or open a return, and let's just say you have thousands of returns, because if you have 5, not a big deal. You open the return grid and you can just see them all. But when you start getting hundreds of returns and you're trying to find something, usually you'll go to open return, whether you do it here or whether you search for a return in the grid. Before, you used to have to enter the entire Social Security number. And you'll notice now I only entered the first 3 digits, and it brought up the 2 Social Security numbers or TINs that started with 1, 2, 3. I also can do the same thing if I want to type like a name. So again, I started to type Evanoff, and you can see I use my poor husband and I all the time for fake returns. And it brought up the 3 there. So instead of before, all you had was the Social Security number or TIN, and you had to put the entire number in. You no longer have to do that. You can just start typing and do the first 3, and it brings it up. And again, same thing in the tax return grid. If I do 1, 2, 3 and go, it does it right there. So those are those same 2 I did. And I can also do it with letters from the name as well. So that is a new change to opening return. The other thing we did, because all of us are working in different sections of TaxWise Online, we added this new return summary search. You see it up here at the top. And so it's kind of cool. So the other thing, if any of you used desktop before, is that we also use the F7 function key. And you'll see here, that's your return summary. So we called it return query. But with the new place, no matter what tab I'm on, I can get to a return summary. So if I'm working in e-filing, before I did not have a return search or a return query button there. So if I was e-filing returns and somebody called and they wanted to check the status of their return, I'd have to go to the returns tab, and then I could see it there, or I would have to go into the dashboard to be able to check return status. So again, having this return summary search up here is much easier. It's for any place I am. So if I'm in e-filing and I'm working on submitting e-files or doing whatever, I can get to this return summary search here. So that is a new piece that we added to the return summary. I don't e-file returns. Hold on. I'm trying to get to a grid and show you something there. I don't send returns or transmit returns because, of course, these are all fake returns. So I'm just going to open this return because I want to show you something here. So if I press F7, you'll notice it brings up this particular customer's information. So again, if I'm in the return, this F7 will give me the return summary for the return I'm in. If I want a different return, then I can type a name. And again, when I started to type Evanoff, it shows the different ones that I have. So if they call about something, I can just open it and get to this return query as well. We're just going to look at this particular one here. So we also have changed the information that's here and how much is here as well. So you'll notice I have the taxpayer information, basic phone, social security address, but then I have income information. So again, I have earned income, taxable income payments and credits, AGI, EIC. You'll also notice down below, it shows the tax liability, what was held, the estimated tax paid, and then the refund, both for the US and for California. You can see it here as well. You also have your e-file status. So again, it shows on here that I didn't send anything, but if I did, it would have the information about the e-file status here. Your reject history is here. This says fee summary and payments because this, of course, is a paper or an e-filed return, not a bank product. But if it's a bank product, it will say bank product on here, and it will have the information about the bank product. Okay, so again, for this particular one, if I show it, it'll show my payments. So you see my total charges is 110 and my current balance is 110. If they had paid me all or part of it, again, this is an e-file or a paper return, and I mark the payment on the price sheet, that would show down here as well. So all that information is there too. And then, of course, your client notes. So whether I've added a client note within the return, it shows up here. I'll scroll down so you can see it a little. Let's see, we can't drag that up. And you'll see they're all date and time stamped and what username put the note in. So I have notes here in the client note section. So that is the new change to the return summary. The other thing we changed is the refund monitor. So if you look at the refund monitor, we had a lot of complaints about not really being able to see the refund or balance due because in prior years, there wasn't this white box. So all of this line was this color blue, and then this green was inside it, and it was close to impossible to see. And so we had a lot of customer complaints about it. So what we did is added this white box. So again, you can see the refund in green. Of course, if it's a balance due, it will be in red. And no matter what color theme people have used, it shows up with the white box where it did not when the entire line was this color blue. And then you had the green for the refund. It was very, very hard to see. Okay, so those are some basics there. I'm going on to my next screen. We also relocated the tax book link and the chat. So the TaxWise chat. It used to be, we had a big box in the bottom right-hand corner for the tax book and for the TaxWise chat. You'll see that the chat is now up here. And then also for the tax book, if any of you have that, I don't know if you do, but we have the web library for the tax book. You would get to that web library here to do your search. So again, we just moved it. It was in the way of the scroll bar. It was actually in the way of entering data on some of the fields. And so it was more of a nuisance than it was anything else. Hold on and let me save and close this. And I have to find somebody that I did a signature. The other thing that we did too is if you guys use e-signature, we had some problems because with the e-signature, it sent out the original email to the taxpayer, and half the time they couldn't find it. And so the preparers would resend it again and again and again. And every time they sent it, it would charge them for the e-signatures. So now what happens is when you send them a request to sign the return with the e-signature, it will send them a new email every day until they sign it. And if I've already sent them the request, it gives me these notifications and warnings. So again, taxpayer will get a daily email requesting signatures until all required signatures are captured. And then also you see here, if I say yes, do a new request, it's telling me that it'll be an additional charge. So we added those two warnings in as well as changing the time frame. Before they got the email, and then in 74 days they got another one. Why it's 74 days, I have no idea. And people couldn't find the link to sign, and so it was a never-ending battle. So we made some changes there to make it easier to use.
And not to interrupt, Dawn, but for everyone, I do want to reassure you, again, CIT's pricing model hasn't changed. So you guys will never incur charges for your e-signatures. Those are included with our programs for free, but you will see that same pop-up just because it's programmed across the software.
Great. Thank you. And please interrupt with that because, again, I train the masses in TaxWise. So if you have particular offerings that you offer as a service bureau, I have no knowledge of that. So please, by all means, jump in with anything that's there. Okay. The other thing that was pretty good on here, and let me close this and go to another return. Sorry. I apologize when we share, it's pretty slow. So another thing that we've added too is you'll notice here, and it's kind of little, but you'll see it says created ext. So it's the extension file, which we had a lot of people not understanding whether they created a tax return when they did create e-file, whether it was for the extension, whether it was for the tax return, or whether it was for an amended return. And so what we have done now, and I'm just going to open this one because I have the extension forms in it already. So once you run diagnostics, you'll notice now the button says create extension. Because again, a lot of people were concerned because you put information into the tax return and they were afraid they were sending an incomplete return rather than the extension. There was nothing to make them feel comfortable that it was actually the extension that was going out. So now this button says create extension. On this one, I just have the federal. I'll click create. You'll see it was created successfully. And then when I go to the e-filing tab as well, you'll see here, this says extension. I don't have an amended here with me, but the same thing will happen, that it will say the amended return here for the file type. So again, you'll know if it's a tax return and extension or amended when you go to the e-filing tab under that e-file type. That was added as well. Okay, so that was another piece that was there. Do you guys, Alexis, do you guys use mobile?
Yes, we do. We include that for all of our offices.
Okay, so I'm going to go in there too to show some of that then. Under your co-brand mobile app, so setting up your co-brands, we've always had the prep fees, but it doesn't pull from your price sheet. So what happened originally was we kind of built this for DIY to go after the DIY market. So they were coming to you instead of going to TurboTax and other people on this. And so most of the preparers did a single price for the tax return, kind of like the DIY software does. And so when they did the pricing on here, it just has a single prep fee. So you couldn't, if they had 6 more forms in it that you normally would charge more money for, it didn't show up here. So what a lot of people did is they just left the prices as 0 and said they would tell them the price once they did the return. But now we added this checkbox. So right now it says show tax preparation fee during interview. But if I uncheck it, then it will not show the pricing. So they don't even see that screen with 0 or whatever pricing you have on it. So you can take it off so it does not show. So again, that's another piece that we got feedback from customers and they didn't like it. So we had it where they could hide this particular screen within mobile. The other thing that we also got was about the settlement solutions. So you see here, we now have a settlement solution. And again, we typically offered it within the interview, but it's before they even know what the refund is. So they're trying to pick a bank product without even knowing what the refund was. So some people said they really didn't want it within the interview, that once they completed the return and had the exact refund, that then they wanted to talk to them about a settlement solution. So again, you can have the settlement solution offer in the interview, or if I uncheck it, it will no longer be in the interview. So that was another piece that we added as well. Those were basically the changes that we did within mobile. And the last change we did, I can't show it because again, I don't e-file, but you know, when you do a tax return, and I'm going to pick one that has errors so we can look at it. We'll just pick this one, random client. Let's see what they got. So if you run diagnostics, and of course I picked one that almost everything was done, you get your diagnostic errors. So in prior years, from 22 back, you'll clear all your errors and you get it your e-file button when you get the errors cleared. So what I'm going to do is just take the New Jersey return off. Give me 1 minute. Let me take the New Jersey return off. Let's run diagnostics again. Okay, so you'd run diagnostics. Once you have no errors, you'd click create e-file, and then all of a sudden you'd get another error, a validation error, and it kind of like wasn't in English. It was hard to understand. They're called MEF, so the modernized e-file validation errors. What we did is we merged them together. So you'll do your diagnostic errors. You'll get it clear like this. In the background, it will run to see if there's any validation errors. You will not get a create e-file button if you have a validation error. What it will do is then it will include the validation error for you to fix. Once the validation error is fixed, then you will get the create e-file. So we consolidated them so that you don't get the create e-file, think you're good to go, and then all of a sudden you've got another darn error. We also tried to do as many as we can. I'm not telling you we got to all of them, to kind of help the language so it was more easy to understand. The language we had been displaying is what we get back from the IRS. And they just kind of threw it back out to you rather than changing it so it was more user friendly for you guys to fix whatever it was. Also, if the errors are in red, typically there's a hyperlink to the problem. If they're in black, there is not. And that is both for diagnostic and MEF validation errors. So those were the things that got added this year. Do you have any questions there, or does anybody have any questions they can put in the Q&A about some of the new improvements that we've put into it?
Yeah, so we do have a couple questions lined up, and I know we actually went through this pretty quick. I do have a couple of desktop offices that did attend today's webinar. Could we quickly kind of cover some of the updates that they could potentially see in the desktop program for this year?
Well, unfortunately, there are no updates in desktop. But that being said, one of the major things we did this year was you can now work in both desktop and in online and e-file from both. So let me talk to you about why we did that. We have been hearing at the IRS forums, at the GetWise seminar we just were at from the customers, what we're seeing a lot of is that parents are aging out, the people that own the businesses, and their kids are coming into it, or a younger generation. You know, they may be 40 and under type age group. Well, those kids that are taking over their parents' business do not want desktop software at all. But the parents that are still involved and maybe slowing down a little, but are still involved, they don't want to let go of desktop. So now if you purchase TaxWise Online, you always had desktop as a backup where if something happened to your internet, you could still do returns in desktop, but you had to transfer them into online and import them in and then create the e-file and transmit them right from online. You no longer have to do that. So if you have someone who's been using desktop forever and a day, and they don't want to stop using desktop, they can continue creating returns, running diagnostic, e-filing returns, getting acknowledgments back all in desktop. And then if you have younger people that you've hired, or your kids are now taking over the business or coming into the business and they want an online product, they can use TaxWise Online. Same client ID, same reg code, everything's the same, but they would log into TaxWise Online, do the tax returns, again, run diagnostics, create e-files, transmit the returns, and they will get the acknowledgments in online. So the acknowledgments come back to only the software that you e-filed from. Okay. So you have to go into desktop and get Axe and Mail for the acknowledgments to come back to update the data, to being, rather than sent, being accepted or rejected. And the same thing with online, you would go to your e-filing and view acknowledgments to get the acknowledgments back so that it will update the status as well. But
just to clarify, that's only for 1040, guys. We are still in the process of moving those business returns into the online software, but for right now, that's just going to be for 1040.
And that is correct. We'll have 1065 and 1120S for tax year 24. So January of 25, you will see 1065 and 1120S's only. We're adding those two because that was the bulk of returns that everyone did in desktop. So we worked on creating those first, and they're coming along great. And we're not duplicating desktop. We're making things better. Okay. So it works the same. Don't get me wrong. You're still going to your trial balance, entering your data. It still flows to where it needs to go. You add your K1s. All the processes are the same, but we're making things like the K1 pass through. We're making it a much better customer experience. And we have a group of people that are working with us on it to get customer feedback. So it's not us telling you it's a better customer experience. It's what they're telling us they need to have a better customer experience. So yeah. All your business returns are still for tax year 23. They will all be done in desktop. Any other questions?
It looks like our next question, when the extension is accepted, does it show as accepted extension as well?
Ooh, good question. I'll have to ask. I don't know. That is not something I pulled up. And like I said, because I don't transmit, I don't ever get to see that. So I'm going to see if I can open this, and I'm going to move it out. And I'm going to ask one of the developers right now. So I'll have to get an answer back because I don't know. So we'll do that and see if we can get an answer on that.
Perfect. And while you're doing that, I can answer the next two questions. Our next question was, can we create extensions in CIT now? You have always been able to create extensions for your 1040 returns. So all you do to create an extension is on the main information page, you're going to switch it over from this income tax return to the extension forms and e-file it that way. But if you need someone to show you how to, please give us a call after this webinar and we'd be happy to walk you through it. The next question, will this recording be shared? Yes, it probably will be tomorrow that we'll get it posted on our YouTube channel. We also have, I believe, 3 other webinars coming up in the next 2 weeks. After each of those will be posted as well. So it's a great resource for you guys to go back and look at. Next one, in regards to the characters in the name, last year we had to delete some characters because it was too long. I have many clients using both last names. As far as this one, John, correct me if I am wrong. I do believe that it's still the same as last year. Basically, what ended up happening is the software basically is following the IRS requirements. So when the IRS receives a tax return, they only look at 34 characters for the name. And so it's where sometimes when you have multiple last names or very long last names, we do end up having to shorten it down a little bit. But from my understanding right now, that has not currently changed. Dawn, have you heard anything different?
No, you're correct that it is not. And guys, the thing you need to understand is that when the return actually goes to the IRS, when they're verifying the Social Security numbers, they look at Social Security number, date of birth, and they only look at the first 4 letters of the last name. So that's why they've always just done it like 34 characters or 30 characters. Because again, years ago, because you got to remember how long e-filing and stuff has been around, people didn't use like hyphenated last names and things like that. So they have not changed that. Some software companies do it in the background, but unfortunately, sometimes that causes more trouble than it's worth, because sometimes they'll delete things off that then the person has trouble. It doesn't get accepted because they took stuff off at the beginning instead of the end, or sometimes they'll, like, my name is really Dawn Marie is my first name and Evanoff. But I always use Dawn M like when I do stuff, because it's just too long again. And so it's one of those things that we're leaving it up to you to decide what to take off. And all you need to do is take a couple things off at the end. Always leave, like if it was Kramer Evanoff, for my last name is what's on my social security card, Kramer-Evanoff. You want to make sure that that CRAM is there, and take off like the OFF on the Evanoff, if that's a problem, because they're only looking at those first letters. So it's just one of those things that we don't just do it for you, because sometimes that can cause more problems than it's worth. Okay. And yeah, it's still there. And I don't see it going away. Unless the IRS finally decides to lengthen the fields, because they control the total length of every single field that we can have. That's not something we do. It's something the IRS does with their systems. And that's kind of part of that whole schema validation stuff too, is making sure that we don't have more in the fields than what's allowed.
Perfect. And this is actually a good question. So now that you can e-file from both the desktop and online, is there a way to sync the two systems so that they have access to both, or do they still operate as separate databases in some way?
They're still separate. So there, you can export the data out of TaxWise online. And I always recommend that for people, like when the because you have access for 7 years, which is statute of limitations for most things. So you always have 7 years of it. But let's say that right now you've got a year that's falling off. I always recommend that you export out of TaxWise online so that you have the data, and then put it, of course, like in a safe or somewhere for safekeeping, because it's personal information. But you can also bring that data and bring it into TaxWise desktop. So there are ways to do it. There are various steps. It's not just a click a button and it automatically goes. But you can bring the databases together. But it's a lot of steps. I don't know if you really want to do that. You know, I mean, I think the best thing really to do is try and get as many people online for the 1040. And then as we add the business returns, try and move them over. But again, you have people that have been using the software forever. I mean, somebody said, you're taking this out of my cold, dead hands. I'm not changing from desktop. And that's how they feel. So, you know, that allows them to stay with it and not leave. I had people that worked for me that when we changed software, they were like, if you change, I'm gone, because I'm close to retirement. I'm just comfortable with what I'm doing, and I'm not stressing myself out by learning something new. So I could let them stay with desktop and have them take care of their customers and not have those customers go somewhere else, and keep them as an employee. So you're looking to make people happy and to stay, but really, like any new employees, I would put them on online, because guys, it's the way all of our lives are going. You know, I mean, it's what's happening in everything we do, whether it's shopping, banking, grocery shopping, getting dinner, doing anything, it's all going online. So eventually that's where everything will be. But again, we've got old timers that have been around a long, long time using desktop.
Perfect. And it looks like we forgot half of it. Can we go ahead and go over the setup assistant? I got a couple questions for a refresher on carrying forward all that data.
I was going to do that. I just was trying to see what questions they had on the enhancements, and then I would go to the carry forward stuff. So we're good to go to carry forward. We got all the questions.
So far, yes, I'll let you know if anything else comes in, but it looks like that's wrapping up.
Alex, can I ask you one last question? Do you guys have the light bulb up here, or did you guys shut it off?
No, we do have it.
Okay, so I want to bring this up to everybody. So right here, you have this little light bulb. And if you hover over it, it says send ideas. And when you click on it, it asks for your idea. Use this. I know people think we don't look at it, but we actually get together at least every month and we go over the new ideas. And what we do is we have buckets. So for example, we have a printing return bucket. And so any new enhancements or anything that people write, we put into that bucket. And then we look at what kind of things do we need to do or change for printing returns? What are customers looking for? Sometimes it's things that are there and they don't realize it, which in that case, we try and get back to you to let you know that it does exist. You just don't see it or don't understand how to use it. Please always put your name and your email address, because then we can call you back or get in touch with you, email you if we have questions or don't understand what you're explaining to us. Okay. And that's how a lot of these items came through. We had tons of complaints here in this ideas portal about the color of seeing the refund monitor or the balance due. And again, you get so used to things, we see them, but people who changed, like there's an orange coloration that they could use, trying to see that red in the orange was almost impossible. And so that's how we get a lot of ideas. So please, and you can get to it no matter where you are. So if you're in the middle of a return and you're entering something and you're like, this is crazy, why am I doing this? It should pull from X spot and bring it here. You can enter that here. We are not able to do everything every year. But what we do is prioritize stuff. If we see we got a ton of stuff, like we did about changing that color in the background, we put that as a higher priority. And then we get it, they figure out how much time it's going to take, and then we fit the things in we can that we have time for. So please let us know what changes you'd like in the software. Know that we are looking at them. We don't ignore them. And that we start working as much as we can on knocking them off and getting them done to get things back in the software that you would like. You also may, we're going to start using like some polling items on here, or questions, or like a survey of what's more important to you, A or B. Because if we've only got time to do one and we have two that are prioritized exactly the same, we may bring it back to you to ask you, what do you think? Which one should it be? What's more important to everybody? And again, we then do which one we can by how much, how many people answer us back of what's more important. He just said that it should say for the accepted, the extension at least. The question that came through of when the return was accepted, the extension, whether it would have it in the column that it was the extension that was accepted. And Thomas said, yes, it should be there. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to test any of that. Again, I don't transmit returns, so I don't have live data to see what actually happens in live situations. But that was one of the questions we had earlier, Alexis, that we just got the answer from development on.
Perfect. And tell Thomas I said thank you as well.
Not a problem. I will. All right. We good to move on? All the questions answered on the enhancements?
Yep.
Okay. So let's go back here to the dashboard. So you are moving from 22 software to 23. You'll notice you have a setup assistant here, and you can use last year's configurations to bring forward. So
I will interrupt you here. When you guys do this, you do want to make sure that you are clicking to carry forward the prep use form, as that's going to be what carries forward your CIT on line 25 to go ahead and override that cosmetic issue in the software where it charges $10 for state. If you don't do it, again, it will never charge it, but it gets rid of it from the cosmetic side.
Okay, so I just checked it in mine. So on the configuration settings, this will carry things forward. And again, you have to look at what you want carried forward. So an example would be if I have temporary people that work for me and most of those people did not come back this year, then I wouldn't carry forward all the preparer and ERO information. But it's one of those things that you might want to do it if one person is left and everybody else is there, you can leave it in. Or the assigned roles, maybe you changed what they do and you want to redo the roles. It's up to you. But you can do any of these and you'll click carry forward. I have a bunch of templates. I'm just going to say okay. And I've already done this a couple of times, so. And I shouldn't have done it because it's so big and so it's processing and taking a minute. There we go. So that's your setup assistant there. You also, if you come up here in administrator, if you're not doing all of those, also in your settings here, if it'll open, there we go. Under general settings, you also have a carry forward template here as well. But again, because I did mine and did all of mine, they all came through there. So you can do that as well. I train, and so I'm always setting up new templates. I think I have 40 of them or something crazy. So it's not the situation that you're all going to be in. But you can, there is another carry forward piece there as well. You'll notice now if I go to my return templates, I have a load of return templates. Please always double check them. You want to make sure that your pricing is the way you want it. You want to make sure that everything is there that you need to be. So always go back in and edit the template. And I'm just grabbing this one. Take a look at everything. Make sure it's good. Look at your price sheet and make sure your pricing is set up correctly. And that everything's good to go with your price sheet as well. If I can grab this little slider, there we go. So that everything's good. And if you have any price increases or anything like that, you'll see here, I have added Protection Plus into mine. One of the things that I talk to people about doing a lot, and again, it's up to you. This is always your business, your tax business. But a lot of people are adding a technology fee in this other component to include different things so that they're charging a technology fee just like the banks do. You have a technology fee on your bank products as well to be able to cover the cost and give you a little extra income as well from different products and things that are offered. And it gives a value to that type of product to the customer as well. You know, the more things you do for your customer that you take care of for them, the stickier they are. And so if you do their tax return, and again, I'm just using Protection Plus. If you do the firm level Protection Plus, that has the identity restoration. Depending on where you're located, there's some areas that identity theft is very prevalent. And it's not just if the identity theft is done in the tax return, it's if it's been done at all. They help to restore the identity, and it's everybody on the tax return for the $10 cost. So just those kind of things here that you can add in as well in your template. I'm going to go ahead and close this, save and close. If you end up with multiple templates, like I have, what you can do, and I'm trying to see if I've got one marked right now. Nope, I lost them all. Somebody's been in here playing. If this is the template that I want every one of my users to get, I want them all to have this template. If I click on the name of the template, not the little publish or edit pencil or the publish, but on the actual name, you see here as it says set as default. Once I save that, or if there's a check mark in one, then every user will automatically get that template unless I've assigned something different to them. So again, a lot of people forget to check that little button, and then they're like, okay, I just started a return, or Mary just started a return, and all the template data is not there. It's because you haven't assigned a template to her or created a default one that everyone would get, unless you assign something different. Okay, I need to start deleting some of mine because the more I train, the more I've got here. So, but you won't have this many. You'll have one or two, I assume, at max. Okay. You know, with your taxpayer data, that if you transmitted the return last year, so if you e-filed the return last year, whether you did it in desktop or you did it in online, the data, once you start the return and put the social in 2 times and click go to forms or interview, it will then carry that data forward. So as long as it was e-filed through the same client ID, that data will carry forward automatically for the taxpayer data. If your taxpayer is using mobile, if they used mobile last year, the data will carry into their mobile this year if they log in with the same email address that they used last year. The data will carry in, and then they will just have to edit whatever's changed if anything has. Maybe it hasn't. But for mobile. But data will not pull from TaxWise Online last year to mobile 23. Mobile does to mobile, TaxWise Online does to TaxWise Online, and desktop does to either desktop or online. Any other questions or anything else you want me to cover while I'm here?
Let's see. The last question we got, are you able to print out the main information page? Yes, that can be printed out, just as any form can be printed out. If you, right now we don't have printing access for 2023 yet, but we'd be happy to show you in a prior year. If you go ahead and give us a call after this webinar, I can have someone walk you through it.
They can add it to their print sets, or they can, if they're in a return, they can just print if that's all they want printed. Again, depending on how they use it and why they want it. So remember, you have a printer icon here, and you can pick whatever one you want. So if you just want to print the main info, you can just put a 1 and do a print. Make sure everything else is 0. Otherwise, because I play in here, so sometimes I change them. But then you can print just the main info right there, or you can include it into the print set, either one. A lot of people don't realize about this print forms. For those of you that were TaxWise desktop users, this is classic print or print form, either one. It takes the place of those. So if you just want a certain form printed, you can get it from here. Some people use this to print like the 8879 first. So they come in here and do the 8879 print, and then they print the packet for the customer, because then they've got the 8879 that the taxpayer can sign while everything else is printing out. Again, just looking at efficiency and time saving. So you can do that as well.
Perfect. And I think that's the end of our questions here. As a reminder for everyone, this week we do have another webinar on Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, that's going to be with Dawn and I. And in that webinar, we're going to go into some of these products in more depth. So some of the things we'll cover in that webinar are going to be bulk, which is the paperless storage, e-signature, mobile apps, as well as some of your other smaller built-in features that you guys may not be using, such as notes and return stages. So again, that's this Thursday at 1 p.m. And then on Monday next week, we do have a newer webinar I don't think we've done before. And that one we're going to focus more on the TaxWise Solution Center. So we're going to go over the reports, the knowledge base, your training tools there, and additional resources. That way you guys can get a better grasp on, some products that you may not be taking full advantage of. So after this webinar, I will resend out the invites to those webinars. That way, if you haven't signed up yet, you can jump on board. But other than that, I think that's going to wrap us up today. And I just wanted to thank you again for your time, Dawn.
No problem, anytime. And I'm glad we're giving people some time back to their day. But we covered everything. So as long as they have no other questions, we're good.
Awesome. You all have a great day, okay?
Everybody, thank you.
Bye.